It's that time of year. It's time to talk about positional tiers. We're looking at point guards, and we're doing it with Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NBA fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and Little Chimovich over the top of it. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter, as always, at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today's episode is brought to you by the Game Time app. Download the Game Time app, create the account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. Thank you also for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free, and we are available on all platforms, so hit the thumbs up and the double bang and the comments and all that sort of stuff. Now, it's time to do positional tiers, and for the last 7 years, I think it's been, when we've done the positional tiers at this time of year, I've done it with Matt Smith. Matt isn't doing it with me this year because he's about to, his partner is about to have another child, and his schedule's all over the place. Already got one little one. So we're trying to work it out. He's like, I don't know when I'm going to be available. There's too much up in the air, so I'm not going to be able to do it this year. So it's me. I'm doing it by myself, doing the tiers. Matt is not talking through his tiers, which he publishes over at Basketball Monster. So we're doing it a little bit different this year. A couple of things just to get it out of the way. I'm going to focus this on category leagues. If you are in a points league and you think that a positional tiers series for a points league would be useful, I want to hear about it in the comments now, whether that's on the YouTube side, or again, if you are on Spotify, you can leave episode comments there. But if you're on YouTube, it's easy for me to see. If you want points league positional tiers, chuck them down below. They are going to be relatively similar with some differences with some players. You can go back and reference my points league versus category league, who are the gainers and risers and fallers between the two formats. This is also, these positional tiers are going to be catered towards head-to-head leagues. So it's going to be leaning into head-to-head strategy, weekly matchup strategy, punting head-to-head category strategy for a standard league. That's the majority of people play. That is what the majority of things work. Roto tiers are a little different. And what I will have coming out at some point, maybe this week, is like just an overall top 25-ish list for all formats. Head-to-head categories, roto categories, Yahoo points, ESPN points. It'll come at some point, probably this week. So again, when we talk tiers as well, I won't talk about this. It's all good to get this preamble out now. I won't do it for every position here. But when we say tier 2, that doesn't mean round 2. This is just sort of guys who are grouped together. And if you take someone over the other guy, hard to have a gigantic argument about it. I'm sure you still will, but hard to have that argument. It's not based on, well, I'd take this guy here because his ADP sits at this spot, and therefore I can wait 3 more rounds and get him. That's a different calculation to make in terms of trying to accumulate the right value. This is just sort of the areas that I have these players in a draft. And the other thing is, when we do a tiering system, is that I've done it this way. Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3. Of course, that's how we count numbers, right? That's what we do. But in reality, like if I was to publish the way that the tiers came out, it doesn't actually look like that. It's like we try and have the appropriate spacing between each tiers, and it comes out as like Tier 1, Tier 4, Tier 5. We miss Tier 10, and there's just different groupings because there's sometimes these big gaps. And I'll talk about that as we go through this. So let's talk about point guards. Let's talk about fantasy tiers. The other thing in the past that we have done, and I decided to change that this year as well, is that we would say, well, if a player is not in this point guard tier, we're going to put him in the shooting guard tier. All right, I've scrapped that idea. I'm just going to use Yahoo positional eligibilities. So if a player appears point guard eligible on Yahoo, he will be in the point guard tiers. So you're going to have double up between these 5 shows. But I think that's reasonable given the way the positional eligibility works. Some people it's always a comment, where's this guy? Why isn't he here? And go, oh, he's in this tier, he's in this tier. So I thought I'd just try to eliminate that part of it. And so if you've got a point guard tag next to your name, you're in the point guard tiers. And so on and so forth for the other positions. I think that's the best way. But as you know, it might not be. And people will have issues either way, and that's okay. Let's talk about tier 1. What are we looking at for tier 1? Across the point guard positions, I don't think this is super controversial at all. Maybe it is. But in tier 1, I am going to sit Luka Doncic alone. I'm going to sit him there by himself in tier 1. I am well aware that there is a 2-game playoff week for Luka, and I believe if you use my recommended playoff schedule where that 2 week is in your championship week, I would be relatively reluctant to look at Luka at pick 3. But if you're in a Yahoo default, and that is your first week of playoffs, I'm actually okay with that. I think that's not going to influence me that much. It doesn't matter for roto leagues. But for head-to-head leagues, there is a large gap between Luka and the rest, obviously. And it's annoying that the player that seems like the clear number 3 to me in leagues this season is going to have a 2-game week again. And actually, the difference between him and the rest of the players is not, it's not all that close. But I do think that if that is, we're talking championship week, I'd be a little reluctant to take Luka at number 3. But there are many different situations where it's fine. So he does sit alone. For me here in tier number 1. Again, this is not super controversial. He's got an ADP on Yahoo at number 3. He's got an ESPN ADP at number 3. We know how good he was last year. He averaged 34, 9, and 10. He got steals. He shot well from the field and the line. Like 49 and 79, they're great numbers. He hit over 4 threes a game. These are ridiculously good numbers, as you're well aware. This is Luka. Is anything going to change, like from his 37 minutes and 36 usage? Maybe you could argue that the minutes drop after a finals run. That is possible. He was unbelievably banged up. And now he's got this finals team around him that he didn't have at the beginning of last season. So maybe that pulls back, and then that narrows the gap between him and the guys we have sitting in the other tiers. And I'm sure you know who's going to be sitting in tier 2. That's not, I don't think it's a super surprise or anything like that, because we are looking at in tier number 2 by himself is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Now, there were times last year where Shai was the number 1 player in fantasy. I am a little, I won't say I'm fading Shai necessarily, but I'm a little less interested in him than others are. His free throw numbers, which had that gigantic spike 2 years ago, they came back from like 91 to 87. And they were like 82, which is where he'd been his first 4 years of his career for the last 2 months. He ran on insane steal and block numbers, which could also come back. Some of that gets balanced by, I think, more assists and perhaps more usage. But I'm not like looking at, well, he just did everything the same last year and then scoring and assists are going to go up. I don't think that's a realistic type way of looking at what Shai did. His ADP sits at 4. On ESPN, for some reason, it's at 5. He did average 30 and 6 last year with 2 steals and 0.9 blocks. It was down to 87 from the line, like I said. And that was sitting at like 82, 83 the final couple of months. And he didn't shoot well through the Olympic play from the line and didn't shoot well from the playoffs from the line either, I believe. So there are a few little marginal concerns, I guess, with some of Shai's recent production. But ADP of 4 on Yahoo, ADP of 5 on ESPN. And when I said earlier, like, he's in tier 2 here. But when I talk about the tiers and the gaps and the differences in the valuations I have of these players, it's actually more like a Luka's tier 1 and Shai's tier 4. That is the size of that gap at the moment. I still think that you don't love that idea of taking Luka for the 2-game week if that's your championship week, but there is a sizable gap between these two players. We'll get to tier 3 in a sec, but today's episode is brought to you by the Game Time app. Game Time has had so many great features, and we've talked about them so many times on this show. The zone deals, the flash deals. The other thing that's really important, the flash deals is part of this, is that the closer you get to when the event starts, the prices go down on Game Time, but they've also introduced something new, and that's called Game Time Picks. Game Time Picks filters through all of the ticket options for the event that you want to go to, and just shows you the good ones. It does show you all of them, but it puts the good ones right at the top. So you don't have to filter through every ticket option. Is this actually good? Is this bad? What's the price going on here? What are we doing? It puts all the good ones there and go, hey, this is actually a pretty good deal. You might want to get on that. That's what Game Time Picks does. It's curated deals, saving you time and, of course, saving you money. And, as always, you've got the views from your seat. You've got the lowest price guarantee, where if you find the price somewhere else, you get 110% credit back. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply again. Create the account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Okay, so it's tier 1, tier 2 out of the way. Logic would suggest we're on to tier 3. Again, remembering that there were a few little gaps between some of these other tiers. And now this is where I think we start to introduce a little bit of controversy. In tier 3, I have 3 players. Tyrese Haliburton, Trae Young, and LaMelo Ball. Now, if this was on a per game basis, I would not even listen to arguments. Because I think that it is very clear that Haliburton, Young, and Ball should all be in a similar spot. But we can't operate like that all the time, and we can't ignore the fact that LaMelo has missed a bunch of time the last 2 years. It's also worth highlighting that LaMelo has played 70-plus games in a season before. He is apparently wearing ankle braces this season, and most of his injuries were either bad luck, and the extended absence of them was organizationally induced tanking. Haliburton's got an ADP on Yahoo of 7, 12 on ESPN. Young is 12 on Yahoo and 16 on ESPN. And then LaMelo is the interesting one with 28 on Yahoo and 41 on ESPN. 41. Like, this man last year averaged 24, 5, and 8, almost 2 steals. Yeah, he shot only 43 from the field. That's not it's not great. It's not terrible, though. Hit over 3 threes. You don't need to take LaMelo Ball in round 1. You don't need to take him at the same spot as Tyrese Haliburton. And to be honest, you won't need to take Trae Young probably in the same spot as Tyrese Haliburton either. But I do think that Haliburton, Young, and LaMelo all sit in a very similar area of drafts. I am 100% certain that everyone would put LaMelo third of this group, and they wouldn't have him in this tier. And I get that it is hard to go back to the well on someone who hurt you the year before. That is hard to do, or 2 years ago, or both years, or whatever. That is hard to do. But in terms of, I go through these projections, I'm updating them every day, and I look at them, and the numbers I put up, and this is not just per game. This is using me expecting LaMelo to miss 20 games, actually, and then using a replacement player to buffer the games missed. Also, remember, Trae Young played 57 games last year, I think it was. And Haliburton was injured for the last 3 months, so I wouldn't say any of these guys are a picture of health. So that all balances that out. LaMelo has moved into round 2 on Yahoo, and it does become a scary proposition, but as I'll continue to say, that round 2 is realistically round 3. Again, I know that sounds stupid, but there's probably 25 guys you consider round 3 caliber players, and about 2 guys you consider round 2 guys. It's just a weird spot in drafts, and it's always like that. But Haliburton, Trae Young, LaMelo Ball, I've got as tier 3 point guards. What about tier 4? Well, lucky I asked that question, because that's exactly what we're going to look at now, is who is in tier 4. And when I'm making these tiers, I play around with how we're going to split them and what the gaps need to be and how we adjust them. It's a difficult process, and it's never going to be perfect. But in the end, I came out with one guy in tier 4. And the more I look at it, I go, I'm not really sure that I want Steph Curry to be sitting alone in this tier. How comfortable am I taking Steph in this spot? I'm not sure that I am. His ADP is 12, Steph. His Yahoo ADP, his ESPN ADP is 16. He did not produce up to this level last season, but I think he's going to have to do more. And I think this could be one of the highest usage seasons of Steph's career. The risk of that is that his age, or he's going to turn 37 this season, that it causes injuries. He almost hit 5 threes, 5 assists, 26 points. But remember, Chris Paul's gone. So Paul took assists away from Steph, and I think that will come back. With Clay gone, there's more shots that need to be taken, and I'm not sure that Kuminga and Podziemski just make up that difference. So Steph could average 28. He could average 6.5 assists. The 0.7 steals is unbelievable. He averaged 2 steals a game, points in his career. I'm not saying he's doing that. I don't think that. But we know that steals vary a lot. Like go from 0.7 to 1.2, bang, we're there. I don't love it. I'm not super confident. To me, there's a very clear difference between Trae Young, Tyrese Haliburton, and Steph. And again, per game, LaMelo would smash this. But that's where your discussion comes in, I guess, as to which direction you'd want to go there with a LaMelo Ball in that spot. But I have Steph sitting alone in tier number 4. Tier number 5 is, it's bigger, which is, gives you, I guess, a little bit more to talk about, but it's not massively bigger. It's 2 players. We're talking about 2 guys that are, and there's, I was going to say this is one of the more embarrassing ADPs that I've ever seen, but it's not. It's going to be topped by one of the other ADPs we see later on. Tier 5 at the moment for me consists of Jim Harden, and it consists of Frederick VanVleet. Harden has an ADP of 24 on Yahoo and 46 on ESPN, which is like, I can't with that. Like, what is happening? Why are we doing that with Jim Harden? 46. Like Harden was 27th last season? He averaged only 17 points. He only had 21 usage because Paul George and Russell Westbrook were there, and they are not. And if Kawhi misses more games this year, which I think he will, Harden's not going to be Houston Harden, but he averages 17 and 8. What if he averages 23 and 9? Like, it's really clear to me that Harden is in this group, and I would, I've gone back and forth. I would very, very heavily consider putting either both VanVleet and Harden in the same tier as Steph, and even putting them ahead of him. I could see that. I think there's distinct possibilities. But I told you about the most embarrassing ADP. The most embarrassing ADP so far. Why is Fred VanVleet's I have to double check this. Fred VanVleet's ADP, and I went in like, have I lost my mind? And you can see this if you're watching the video. But why is Fred VanVleet's ADP on ESPN 90? What are we doing? So if you are drafting on ESPN now, and people in your league are following ADPs, and you're snagging the big fella Fred VanVleet in round 8, that's it. That is winning the league. That is done. What is happening? This is a top 20-ish player. Why? Even on Yahoo, his ADP at 37 doesn't make a ton of sense, but in a points league, that's probably more realistic. But 90, I can't get behind that. There's just nothing to get behind. It doesn't make any sense. So I've got tier 5, Jim Harden and Fred VanVleet. We're going to talk about the way that some of those tiers maybe look. Like I had those guys sitting in like a tier of their own in tier 7 in that original sort of tiers gap. Because like I said, the gap between Luka and Shai meant that tier 2 and tier 3 sort of sat empty. That's showing the differences between these players. Let's look at tier 6. I believe this one is a bit of a chunky boy, bit of a big chungus in terms of the amount of players in this tier. There are quite a few guys there. I think we've got 7 players there. I'm going to fit 6 on this one screen, bring the other one up in a second. But we'll start, and these names here are all in, as Troy McClure would say. I was going to say no particular order. That. There's always things from shows, Simpsons being one of those shows that always sticks in my head, where there's just a certain phrase that always just sticks there. And one of them is Troy McClure saying, in no particular order. That is a bad Troy McClure impression because I didn't practice that. But he just said in no particular order. But this is in a particular order. It's alphabetical. So, Devin Booker in tier 6, who's got ADPs of 19 and 15, Yahoo and ESPN. Jalen Brunson has a Yahoo ADP of 21 and an ESPN ADP of 19. Now, in the last Roto mock draft that I did, Brunson went at pick 24. And someone left a comment on my my Instagram post of that, said, man, why is Brunson going so low? So there is some definite stuff about Brunson. That's not too low. That's actually like, I'd argue maybe high. Maybe it's high for Brunson. Because he is not going to have the opportunity to have 32 usage like he did last season. So we don't expect that Randall misses the whole year. They've brought in Bridges and OG is there. He will not do what he did last year. I am very, very certain of that with Brunson. And 21 might be too high of an ADP. But I think there's this bunch of 7 point guard eligible players who are all in a similar spot here. And how you want to order them is up to you. We know that Brunson's not going to be the super, super high volume 3-point guy. He doesn't get any defensive stats or rebounds. And he's not a massively high assist player. And losing usage, I think, is going to hurt him quite a bit. So we've got Devin Booker in tier 6. We've got Jalen Brunson in tier 6. We've got De'Aaron Fox in tier 6. Now, how he is impacted by DeMar DeRozan remains to be seen. There will be some sort of an impact there. He's sitting at 27 and 26 for his ADPs. Kyrie Irving, the 2-game playoff week's a factor. His ADP is 18 on Yahoo. I don't think he should be ahead of guys like Harden and VanVleet. His ADP on ESPN at 28 makes more sense. Damian Lillard sits at 23 and 28 on Yahoo and ESPN respectively. And then the one that people will be surprised about with me is Donovan Mitchell, who, before his knee injury last season, was running as a first-round player, and no reason to think that knee injury is causing a problem at this stage, although you always have a little bit of a worry, what if it's a persistent problem? So why do I have Mitchell paired with a lot of these guys? Well, the number one thing is, there's a couple of things. It's the knee is a bit of a worry, but it's also the change in coach. Now, there is a positive to getting Kenny Atkinson over JB Bickerstaff. A, is a better coach. B, he runs a faster pace. Like they are positives. The negative, though, is that he will not run his guys into the ground the way JB did. He has basically said that. And I'm guessing that part of the issue with Mitchell and his injuries was maybe a wear and tear thing. So instead of him playing 36 minutes a night, Donovan Mitchell, Atkinson has had stretches of playing guys 32, 33 minutes a night. The Budenholzer system. Part of why I dropped Devin Booker down as well, because Budenholzer keeps the guys lower. So that's why I'm a little bit out on Mitchell. The faster pace is good, but going from like 98 to 101 pace, I don't believe is offset by losing 2 minutes a game. So that's why I've got Mitchell here. Now, you could easily argue that Mitchell's the top of this group, and that's probably how I would see it. But I think that they're all sort of close enough to group together. And then we'll just finish off tier 6, because I've got DeJounte Murray here. And whatever I do on the projections for the Pelicans, I can't get him out of this area. And I don't want him here. I think it's going to be harder for him to get usage on this team than it was in Atlanta. But what I do think it is possible for him to do is see more assists. Because that is one of those things that becomes a really important fantasy category thing. So he gets more assists, that bumps him up, even if he loses shots, and I think he will. And I still don't know what they do with CJ or Ingram or how any of that works. But I think he is going to see more assists than he did in Atlanta, and that's what keeps him here. Don't feel good about DeJounte Murray here, but everything I do seems to just push him back there. Let's go on to tier 7 now. So again, a lot of guys in that previous tier. This one's not quite as chunky. There's still quite a few players here. We've got 4 guys sitting in tier 7. And a lot of these guys are your younger players. Well, in fact, I think all of them are relatively young here. We've got Cade Cunningham with an ADP of 38 and an ESPN ADP of 48. Cade was really, really good down the stretch last season. Maybe we get competency in a coach. And the thing is, we talked about JB Bickerstaff. What if JB just pumps 36 minutes a night into Cade and lets him do everything now with some shooting? Tyrese Maxey is in this group. Maxey was really good last year, but I failed to agree, and this could go either way, but I fail to see that there is any way that Maxey improves on last season with Paul George arriving. Even though he's awesome and he took big steps forward, I don't think that he's able to improve, and I think he probably has to cede at least a couple of shots. I think that has to happen. Maxey has an ADP of 25 and then 32 on Yahoo, on ESPN, which is fine. Like, I think he's in this area, but he is, as you can see, like, his ADP is higher than everybody else's here. And I'm just a little bit more skeptical of that. Ja Morant, is this the stupidest ADP so far? No, but it's not great. His ADP is 38 on Yahoo, and his ESPN ADP is 18. Now, that is heavily influenced by points leagues. And I think for points leagues, actually, ADP of 18 is totally okay for Ja. But don't get bamboozled or fooled if you're playing a category that you do not want him there. So I've got Ja around this area, which is, we're talking sort of round 3, round 4, round 5 type of zone, where the further you get into a draft, the more the rounds become like larger. The range of players that you can take in each round becomes bigger the further you get into a draft. That's what I'm trying to say. The next guy I want to talk about is Immanuel Quickley, who's in tier 7. His Yahoo ADP is 55. His ESPN ADP is 90, that's ridiculous. That makes no sense. I don't understand that at all. Quickley, he's 25. He signed a big contract. He averaged 17 and 5 assists last season. Shot 43 from the field, which is not awesome. He's not a big steals guy, but I think that his minutes go up. He only played 29 minutes a game. That should be 34 this year. Usage can go up. Assist rate can go up as well. It's him, it's Barnes, it's Barrett in Toronto. They are the 3 main guys. And in the minutes that Barrett, Quickley, and Barnes played together, about 450 of them, Quickley had the highest usage, then Barrett, then Barnes. That doesn't mean that holds, but that's what happened. So I am interested to see exactly where Quickley's able to go here. And those numbers that he put up last year are sort of hybrid numbers between New York and Toronto. So it's going to be intriguing. But I think he's in that group. But as you can tell by those ADPs, he's going to push back around 2 rounds after. Look, he's going to push back 3 rounds behind Tyrese Maxey. I've got no problem with drafting Tyrese Maxey, but the differences between him and Quickley, I'm not sure they're big enough to justify that large of a gap between the ranks and the ADPs of those players. Today's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. As kids, or when you got kids, and when you were a kid, you know, there's a lot of curiosity. You're always wanting to learn something. What's this? What's that? What's happening here? As you get older, beaten, worn down, you may lose that curiosity. What's my next thing that I'm going to learn? What's my hobby? You don't care when you get older, but that can be a real source of joy, a source of healing, a source of self-care, and a way that you can help improve your life and the lives of those around you. And therapy can help you rediscover that sense of wonder. Your back-to-school era can restart. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. You know that it's online. It's convenient. It's flexible. You fill out the questions, and they match you with a therapist. How much more easy can that get? You go in, you meet the therapist, you have a session, you go, yeah, this is great. Or you say, maybe not. I'm not sure we really vibed. Well, you can change it to a new therapist at any point free of charge. So, rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedonnba today to get 10% off your first month. Visit betterhelp, HELP.com/lockedonnba. So we are 7 tiers into this exercise. Let's follow on to tier 8. Let's talk about some of these players that sit into this group. This tier it's bigger. It's bigger. And there's a wide range of players here. And again, that's what's going to happen. There are going to be plenty of players that you see in these groups as we move forward that you vehemently disagree with. In tier 8, I have got Darius Garland, who's an ADP of 64 on Yahoo, 72 on ESPN. I've got the headmaster, Jamal Murray, who sits at 48 and 47. Now, those two being together is that I'm a little bit more bullish on Garland improving, or I'm a little worried about Murray and the repetitive leg injuries and the way that he looked in certain games. It's a bit of both. I got Jordan Poole here, and you do not take Jordan Poole in this area of a draft. He got an ADP of 90 with an ADP of 99 on ESPN. When Jordan Poole took over from Tyus Jones the second half of last season, he was a top 50 player. I don't know that he's going to be a top 50 player this season. I don't know what they're going to do with Malcolm Brogdon there. But the reports that I keep hearing is that the Wizards still, despite whatever it was that happened last season, they actually still think that Poole can be a big part of what they do. Even more so than Twitter fingers himself, Kyle Kuzma. That's what I've heard, but I don't know that. You don't need to take Jordan Poole here, but I think some of the value you can get might add up. Now, as with everything, when you're playing category leagues, there's so many different combinations and permutations and what stats do I need and all that sort of stuff. So if you don't need points and assists with elite free throws and you're looking to preserve field goals, well, you don't touch Jordan Poole, obviously. If you're looking to stack up defensive stats and you don't worry about usage and scoring, well, Maximum Derek White's in this group, so you can go with him. But it's all going to be individual preference. So I've got Poole here. D'Angelo Russell sits there with an ADP of 74 and 82. The Lakers have made 0 changes from last season. Russell was bad. He got benched. He returned. He was awesome. And then he sort of cooled off to be somewhere in the middle, and I think that's about the right spot for him. And then lastly, it is maximum Derek White, whose Yahoo ADP is 52. His ESPN ADP is 75. Now, White is going to be one of those players that you can look at his numbers. If you look at straight 9-cat rankings, there are plenty of follies with that. The people say, well, you just take him in round 3. And I 100% disagree with that. I do not view him in that spot. And I am the original Derek White man. You know this. If you know anything about me and this channel, you know me, Derek White, we're like this. You know this for years and years and years. But I could not get behind taking Derek White in round 3. You heard me talk about it on the Roto Mock, someone took me in round 2. I just can't do it. I love Derek White. He averaged a steal and 1.2 blocks. Will he do that again? Will he shoot 90% from the line and 40% from 3? Maybe. I wouldn't want to put my money on all that stuff happening again. He's probably going to get to do a little bit more offensively with no Porzingis, but still, I think this is about the right spot. For as much as I love Derek White, I think there are a lot of things that happened that were awesome that maybe just don't quite have the likelihood of recurring that we would want. But again, some of you will look at this and go, man, how can you have Jamal Murray, Jordan Poole, and Derek White in the same tier? I do. Let's go on now to, what tier is it we're up to now? Tier 9 is what we're up to now as we're getting towards the back end of Standard League rankings and drafts. And remember, we're talking about everyone who has point guard eligibility. Some of these players are not point guards. In fact, one of them in this next group is decidedly not a point guard. And that's the first man on here, Brad Beal. There's a lot of talk about how terrible Bradley Beal was last season. And to those people, I would say, maybe just look at the numbers. Because was he awesome? No. The injuries at the start of the season were frustrating. Of course they were. But he was like a top 50 player the last 3 months of the season. There is, unless I'm just completely reading the situation wrong, there is no way in the world that he is coming off the bench for Tyus Jones. That is just not what they're going to do. And Beal has an ADP of 104 on ESPN. You might be asking, is that the worst ADP you've seen? No, it's not. It's still coming. So you're getting Bradley Beal. And again, I'm not going over the top on Beal, but there's a lot of value. In fact, every one of these guys that I have here in Tier 9, I think there's tremendous value in drafting them. Because the next one is Colin Sexton, who has an ADP of 126 on Yahoo. And on ESPN, it's 116. Now, last season, he only played 27 minutes a night, Sexo. He was behind Jordan Clarkson to start the year. I tweeted out a graphic today and posted on Insta about the value of him maybe being a sleeper. He averaged 19 points with 5 assists. He has really excellent efficiency. He's not a high-volume three-point guy. And then I was messaged by somebody, and I'm not going to tell you who that was, but somebody who's plugged in, and said, be a little bit cautious of that with Sexton. I went, okay. Because originally my projections actually had him higher up in Tier 8. And they said, this person told me, I think the Jazz might really commit to the younger guys. Okay, that's interesting. Sexton is only 26. So I did sort of have the idea they would commit to the younger guys. So that would mean I'm not interested in John Collins. I'm not interested in Jordan Clarkson. That boosts Taylor Hendricks. It boosts Walker Kessler. It's a lot there for Keontae George. But I'm not really sure who the player is who's coming up behind Colin Sexton to take those minutes. Are they just going to lean into 29 minutes of Bryce Sensabaugh? I doubt it. Would they run Isaiah Collier and Keontae George together and limit Sexton? I don't think so either. So while I am going to be a little bit hesitant because I trust this person and what they told me, I think maybe some of it is maybe Sexton is moved off at some point in the season. But I think while he's in Utah, I think he's going to be putting up pretty strong numbers. Those numbers you see on the screen if you're watching. 19, 5 assists, 49 and 86%. That's in 27 minutes. And the second half of the year, he was rolling top 60. And look, you don't have to spend anything to get him. He's outside the top 120 on Yahoo. Anthony Simons also very low. Now, I've never seen a man with lower defensive stats than Simons had last season. And his future, I have no idea. ADP 87 on Yahoo and 106 on ESPN. 106 for him is also pretty bad. Is it the worst one? No, it's not. Because that's still coming. I wonder, can you guess what the worst ADP that I'm going to show is on this show? I think Simons is significantly better than what these ADPs would suggest. And he is going to be the guy that leads this team in usage, the Blazers. I don't know that they trade him. I hope we see a little bit of him and Scoot together. there's going to be field goal percentage problems, but he's a great free throw guy. He hits a lot of threes. He'll get some assists. There are downsides, but I don't think that they're just going to marginalize Anthony Simons for this upcoming season. As much as we want to see Scoot do more, I don't really see anything coming immediately. Tier 10. I believe, as I just try to bring it up on the back end here, I think in Tier 10 I've only got one player I do. It is Jalen Suggsy Suggs. Suggs only played 27 minutes a night last season, and they have fully invested in him as the starting point guard. Last year it was Markelle Fultz. They tried Mr. Black in place of Fultz. But this year, well, Fultz is gone. Don't know where he's going to be. And yeah, you could say, well, maybe they're going to play Black there. But what they did is they plugged the other hole at shooting guard with Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, meaning that Suggs is not starting at the 2. That Suggs is starting at the 1. He is the heart and soul, the emotion of this team. He is an elite defender. There are worries at times with shooting, obviously, and low usage. His ADP on ESPN is 136. Is that the worst one? No, it's not. His ADP on Yahoo is 92. His upside is relatively low. So if you are looking for upside shots, you probably don't take it on Suggs. But his ability to get steals, nice enough out of position blocks. The shooting improved amazingly. I think we do get more assist opportunities for him as he plays exclusively point guard versus what he played last year, which was an off-ball guard with Black and with Fultz and then Paolo and Franz there. But I do like him sitting here in Tier 10. The next one we go to is a rather chunky tier. It's Tier 11. There's a lot of players that I have sitting in this tier at the moment. So I've got 11 players in this tier. We start with Mike Conley, who has a Yahoo ADP of 126 and an ESPN ADP of 131. Okay. Conley, we talk about Jalen Suggs maybe not being particularly high upside, neither is Conley. But he's relatively stable. He'll miss some time for sure. His minutes will be low, but just getting some assists. He shot 40% from 3 and I think 90% from the line in multiple seasons. We know what we're getting. Always a risk of injury, but we're fine here. If you want to go upside, though, we look at Colin Sexton's teammate. We go to Keontae George. George stopped and started last season as a starter, but ended up as the starter to end the year, and he will enter this season as the starter. His ADP is 109 on Yahoo, 136 on ESPN. He only played 27 minutes with 22 usage last season, George, and I'd expect both of those numbers to grow. The shooting was bad, but we know year 1 to year 2, you usually get big jumps in efficiency. I'm not saying he's going to be a good and high efficiency player, Keontae George, but I think we get improvements. He averaged 4.5 assists. Like, if he averaged 19.6 assists, 2.5 to 3 threes with 43% and 86 from the line, no one should be shocked. Or maybe he's not really a point guard and they play Collier there and he plays as a weird off-ball, inefficient guy. I am a little worried about that at points, but I think he's really strong here. I'm also going with another rookie in this tier, in Tier 11, Sterling Scooter Henderson, who is 110th on ESPN, 136th on Yahoo ADP. He was top 100 last 3 months of last season in categories and points, I believe. That was with injuries, obviously. They invested a very high pick in Scoot. His finishing at the rim was terrible, but he shot the 3-ball well. I would love for them to be making sure he gets 30 a night. I'm a little worried about how they're going to do it, but I want to see it happen. So it is risky to have him in this area, but there's different players here. Like there's the Conley where there's no upside and probably a lot of downside. Scoot's got a bigger downside, but a much bigger upside. And then you got guys like Tyler Hero and Drew Holiday, who I'm not sure there's any upside. Not sure there's really much downside, but they sit here as well. Hero sits at a Yahoo ADP of 79 and ESPN 89, so it's big differences between these players. So you could theoretically get 2 to 3 of these guys in Tier 11 in a draft. I'm just not really sure what level Hero goes to. I've got Drew Holiday here as well, 81 on Yahoo, 84 on ESPN. He cut his usage down significantly last season. Now, maybe it does jump back up with Porzingis out. He was also able to maintain a very high shooting number, which, again, not wanting to put all my eggs in that basket. His steal numbers also fell away. He's older. He played in the Olympics. There's going to be games off, which is a concern too. And then there's CJ McCollum, who I just am not interested in. I usually am not interested in him. You're well aware of that. I'm even more so not interested in CJ this season where he usually gets drafted. Like ESPN's got him at 75. Like absolutely not. Because DeJounte's there. Herb is there, Trae is there, Brandon's there, Zion's there. Where the hell does CJ play or touch it enough or do any of those things? And those weird blocks that he got last season, will that be something that sticks? I don't know. I don't think so. Just a very weird situation still. But that's not the end of tier 11. I got another 5 guys I've got here. Chris Paul. Yes, Chris Paul was not very good last season, but I don't think he's playing 25 minutes a night again. I think that's going back up as the starting point guard for San Antonio. His ADP is apparently, according to me, 1,115, which is not real. It's 115 on ESPN. It's 102 on Yahoo. I think that's about right. I wouldn't say you're getting a huge steal there. He's obviously at a massive, massive injury risk, but I think he improves a lot from last season. I've got Austin Reeves here. ADP, 84, and then 67 on ESPN. I guess you're asking the question, is that the worst ADP that we've seen? No. It's not good, but it's not the worst. Reeves, I think, he got dicked by Darvin Ham as well last season, so I think we get a little bit more stability. Part of his value was insane 2-point percentage and insane free throw rate, which did fall away. I think that's a bit more realistic for him. I've got Terry Rozier in this area. 98 and 108 are his ADPs. Rozier in Miami is very different to Rozier in Charlotte. This is about the right spot. I am putting Ben Simmons here. You do not draft Ben Simmons at the same spot as these other guys, but I think that if Simmons actually plays, this is the area he may get to, maybe even higher. His ADP is 144. It's a last round pick. I do recommend he gets drafted in leagues, but that's last pick stuff. And I've got Kobe White in this area as well. People think that I'm hating on Kobe White. Got into an argument with some bloke yesterday who thinks I'm hating on him by saying, hey, I'm not really sure that Kobe's going to live up to, like, ESPN's got his ADP at 107, but he's ranked at 56. Like, he's not going to live up to 56. And it is very easy to see with Kobe that, DeMar DeRozan has gone, but Giddey is there, and Levine is back, and I don't know what's going to happen with Levine. White was incredibly streaky last season. He played basically the most minutes in the entire league. He lacks defensive stats. Obviously, I think this is the right tier for him because I put him here. But I don't see, and I've also seen people, man, Kobe's the new face of the team. If Kobe White is, as much as I love Kobe White, and I don't think you would have found anyone who was higher on Kobe White for fantasy last season than me. And if you did, good luck to you. I don't think we need to go too hard on that. I think this is about right for where we see Kobe sitting. Tier 12. Getting towards the end of this list now. In fact, I think we go out to tier 13. Anyway, tier 12, we've got Dyson Daniels, who is sitting with an ADP of 145 on Yahoo, and on ESPN, it's sitting at 140. That is, about right. I do believe that Dyson Daniels will start for Atlanta alongside Trae, Ricochet, Jalen, and Okongwu. I think that means 27-ish minutes for Dyson, 1.6 to 1.9 steals. Maybe he gets 5 assists with 5 rebounds, 12 points, bad free throws, and iffy on other stuff, but it's worth a go. Then we go to Jalen Green, who for some reason is point guard eligible on Yahoo. I yet to see the man play a second at point guard in my life, and I never will. But he's point guard eligible. Here's an ADP of 96 on Yahoo, and he's got an ADP of 36 on ESPN. And you might be asking me, Josh, is that the worst ADP? And yeah, it is. What on earth are we doing? Who is drafting Jalen Green at 36 on average? Has there been one draft on ESPN and someone decided they'd take him at 36? What else could it be? Yeah, he had a great 11-game run. Sick. He averaged 20 points, 5 rebounds, 3.5 assists, putrid defensive stats, 42 from the field, not even good free throws. Like, he's fine. You could argue that he's probably ahead of some of these guys in this group and put him into tier 11. I totally understand that. But they could also just say, we're done with you. And we've got Reed, and we've got Amen, and we've got Fred, and see you later. And I think that's possible too. And we've got Tari, and we've got Cam, and we've got a million other players. Him at 36 is clearly ridiculous. And we'll see what he's able to do. Really good stretch. Terrible. And benched for the majority of fourth quarters before that, and then struggled a bit after that as well. I've got Tyus Jones here. His ADP is 142 on Yahoo, and it is, 139 on ESPN. There'll be people who want to take Tyus around 100, and I do get that, even though you think he's going to start for Phoenix, and he probably does. I don't think that means 32 minutes. In fact, I think if you play Tyus Jones 32 minutes, you will not be a very good team. As good as he is, as a backup and a assist to turnover guy, which is a stat that gets incredibly overrated. Incredibly overrated. If Tyus is playing 32 minutes, that means they are limiting a 46% three-point shooter in Grayson Allen. They're limiting their switchable defensive guy they just re-signed in Royce O'Neal. I don't think that's a likely thing. There are opportunities, and we know how many times the Suns choked away games in the fourth quarter with turnovers. It is a new coach as well, so maybe he just loves Tyus Jones there, Mike Budenholzer. I don't know. But I don't think Tyus Jones' upside is particularly high. Now, if you're chasing assists, then bump him 3 tiers if you want. If you go, man, I absolutely need assists, he probably can do that. But he's never getting shots. Like, he just never is. And I just don't think his minutes are going to be super high. I loved Anthony Melton. He's got an ADP of 142. Actually, that Tyus Jones ADP may be wrong. Let me just double check that. So it's just something about it's just screaming not right that I've mistyped something. Let me have a look. Sorry, yeah, it is. He's 114 and 106, Tyus Jones. My apologies. Which is, again, that's probably about the right area for him, but I am a little worried. D'Anthony Melton, if we knew his back was healthy and he was playing 30 minutes, he'd be way higher than this. But Podziemski's going to start over him, I'm pretty sure. And Buddy Hield is there still. So Melton is fine. He'll get nice steals. But I'm not going to super invest. And then Marcus Smart with a 135 ADP and 138 on ESPN. He comes back. He'll play small forward. He'll play some backup point guard. The upside is relatively low for him. But he could beat this number. I don't think that's super crazy to say he beats this. Lastly, we're going to go to 10 guys in tier 13. I'm not going to cover these guys super intensely. But I've got Grayson Allen, who, again, he's never played a lick of point guard in his life, but he's listed as a point guard. We've got Malcolm Brogdon. We've got Jaden Ivey. We've got TJ McConnell. That's an interesting one. These are all guys that you're looking at last 2 rounds sort of players. And there is TJ McConnell's Indiana teammate, Andy Nembhard, who had some great games in the playoffs. Can't say he ever did that in the regular season. He averaged 9 points a game in 25 minutes. But I think he plays 32, 33 a night pretty easily. If Haliburton's out, the numbers should rise, although they didn't until the playoffs last season. His upside is relatively low, though. Like, if I'm choosing between that group of guys, Grayson Allen, Malcolm Brogdon, Jaden Ivey, TJ McConnell, Andrew Nembhard, I think Ivey's the guy who's got the higher upside out of that group. Brogdon actually probably beats this number pretty comfortably early on as well, until he gets fake injured or traded or whatever happens. But that's, a group of guys that sit here in tier 13. And then lastly, we go to the rest of the guys in tier 13. I've got Kevin Porter Jr. Now, I heard someone mention this other day about Kevin. He's probably actually got a suspension coming. There's been no suspension after his incident last season. He was traded and waived. He played in Greece, but there's the expectation the NBA is going to drop a suspension here too. There is an opening with no Paul George and no Russell Westbrook for him to play some minutes. I don't think that he starts, but he could play 25 minutes. But it's one to watch. Dennis Schroeder, unbelievably unappealing and unappetizing, but he's probably a 30-plus minute guy for Brooklyn initially. Gary Trent's here. Threes and steals, nothing else. Again, point guard, cool. Has the man ever done it? Not a single time in his life, but for some reason he's point guard eligible. I've got Russell Westbrook here. I don't think Russell Westbrook is going to start in Denver, but I think he might play more minutes than Christian Brown. You don't bring Russell Westbrook in at the behest of your best player and have him play 15 minutes a night backing up Jamal Murray. I think that they cross over. I think if he plays 25, and I am not a Russell Westbrook fantasy guy, you're well aware of this, I think. You know the price of the brick going up. I talk about it all the time of how bad he can be. I actually think he's in probably a better situation here than he was in LA. The last one I put on this list is Vince Williams Jr. The G.G. Jackson injury maybe helps Vince marginally, and Vince has limited upside. It probably requires an injury, but he's an unbelievably good defender who can pass and shoot. In 28 minutes a night, like he sort of sits with these guys with low upside, but if we're talking deeper formats, I think he's okay to sit in this spot. And that was point guard tiers. I think when we do the other positions, it won't be quite as long because I won't do the preamble at the start and we'll flow through it a little bit better. But let me know what you thought about the tiers and the presentation and how all that went down. I'm always interested to hear, especially from the haters. Love you guys. So hit the thumb, subscribe, and we'll do shooting guards. I'm not sure what date it'll come out. At the very latest, it'll be tomorrow, but maybe you'll get it today. I don't know. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.